There's a secret that people who've stopped suffering know, and they're not telling anyone. Not reducing their pain, not managing it. They ended it. They're not meditating more, not thinking positively, not reading another self-help book. They discovered something so fundamental that everything else became unnecessary. And the strangest part? You already know it. You've always known it. But the moment I say it, your mind will try to reject it, dismiss it, file it away as something you've heard before. Carl Jung spent his entire life trying to get humanity to understand one single insight. Just one. He wrote thousands of pages, treated countless patients, descended into his own psychological underworld, all to communicate something that takes less than 10 seconds to say. But here's the paradox. If this truth lands, truly lands, not in your intellect but in your bones, every self-help book you've ever read becomes unnecessary. Every guru you've ever followed becomes redundant. Every search you've ever undertaken reveals itself as a strange loop. I'm about to tell you what Jung discovered. And if you really hear it, this might genuinely be the last video you ever need to watch. Here's the secret. You have never experienced reality. Not once. Not for a single moment of your entire life. What you call reality, the people you meet, the situations you encounter, the world you navigate, is not happening to you. It's happening through you. More accurately, it's being created by you. Jung called this the psychic reality, and he considered it more real than what we call the objective world. Think about this carefully. You've never touched raw reality. Everything you've ever experienced has been filtered, processed, and interpreted by your psyche before you became aware of it. Your unconscious mind, with its complexes, its shadows, its buried memories and repressed desires, sits between you and the world like an invisible film projector. You think you're watching life. You're actually watching a movie your unconscious is constantly creating. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. You're not just the audience. You're the director, the screenwriter, the casting agent. You chose the actors. You wrote the scenes. You determined the genre. But you forgot. Somewhere along the way, you forgot you were making the movie. You sat down in the theater of your own creation, looked up at the screen, and started believing it was happening to you. This is what Jung meant when he said we live in a psychological simulation. Not a cosmic matrix, not a spiritual illusion, but a deeply personal construction that we mistake for external truth. Two people can witness the exact same event and walk away with completely different realities. Not opinions, realities. One sees betrayal where the other sees liberation. One experiences attack where the other experiences invitation. Same event, different films. Why? Because they're not seeing the event. They're seeing themselves, projected outward, reflected back. If you truly understand this, not as a clever idea, but as a visceral recognition, something shifts permanently. You stop fighting with the screen. You turn around and look at the projector, and that's when everything changes. Here's what Jung discovered. That explains why your life keeps repeating the same patterns, the same disappointments, the same inexplicable attractions and repulsions. The unconscious doesn't keep secrets. It can't. It has to express itself. But it can't speak directly, so it speaks through projection. It takes everything you've rejected, denied, or forgotten about yourself, and it throws it out into the world like a psychological ventriloquist. Then it makes those rejected parts appear to be other people, external situations, random events. This isn't mysticism. This isn't the law of attraction dressed in psychological language. This is precise mechanics. Jung identified three primary projections that shape almost every human experience. The first is the shadow. These are the parts of yourself you've deemed unacceptable. The anger you've buried, the selfishness you've hidden, the darkness you've denied. Where does it go? It goes onto other people. That person who irritates you for no rational reason, they're carrying your shadow. That public figure you despise with inexplicable intensity, they're wearing your rejected face. Jung said it plainly. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The second projection is what Jung called the anima and animus, the contrasexual element of the psyche. This is why romantic obsession feels so overwhelming. When you fall catastrophically in love, when you can't stop thinking about someone, When their presence seems to complete something missing in you, you're not seeing them. You're seeing your own unlived potential projected onto their form. They become a screen for your own undeveloped self. This is why relationships that begin with obsession often end with disappointment. The projection eventually falls away, and you're left facing an actual human being who never was who you thought they were. They couldn't be. They were never really there. Only your projection was. The third projection involves complexes. These are the psychological knots formed by unprocessed experience, usually from childhood. A complex is like an autonomous personality living inside you, with its own agenda, its own triggers, its own way of hijacking your behavior. And here's what's crucial. Complexes create situations. The abandonment complex creates scenarios of abandonment. The rejection complex manufactures rejection. The unworthiness complex constructs circumstances that prove unworthiness. Not metaphorically, literally. Jung documented case after case of patients whose external lives were precise mirrors of their internal complexes. Change the complex, and the external situation changed. Not through magic, through the mechanics of perception, behavior, and unconscious communication. One of Jung's patients came to him convinced that everyone in her life was trying to control her. Her husband, her colleagues, her friends. Even strangers seemed to carry an agenda of domination. She felt surrounded by puppet masters. Through analysis, Jung helped her see something she couldn't see alone. The controller wasn't outside, it was inside. She carried a massive, unacknowledged need for control that she had repressed completely. Because she couldn't own it, she projected it. Every person she encountered became a screen for her own denied power drive. Here's what happened when she finally integrated this shadow. When she admitted to herself that she wanted control and stopped pretending otherwise, the external controllers vanished. Not because they changed, because she stopped projecting onto them. She withdrew the film, and the characters disappeared from the screen. This is the insanity of how most people live. We stand in front of a mirror, see something we don't like, and try to reach into the glass to change the reflection. We fight with people who are only reflecting our shadows. We chase lovers who are only carrying our projections. We struggle against situations that we ourselves are unconsciously creating. Jung watched this tragedy unfold in patient after patient, and he realized something devastating. Most human conflict is people fighting with their own reflections. Wars are shadow projections at a collective scale. Political hatred is mass projection of the denied self. Relationship battles are two people attacking their own unconscious material while believing they're attacking each other. Once you see this, you can never unsee it, and you can never participate in the same way again. This brings us to the most liberating and most terrifying insight Jung ever articulated. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Read that again. Let it land. What you call destiny, bad luck, karma, the universe testing you, it's not external. It's you, creating, unconsciously, then experiencing your creation as if it were happening to you. That relationship pattern you keep repeating? Not bad luck in love. Your unconscious casting the same role with different actors until you get the message. That career obstacle that keeps appearing in different forms? Not an unfair universe? Your psyche constructing the same lesson in different costumes? That feeling that something is fundamentally wrong, that happiness is always just out of reach, that you're missing something everyone else seems to have? Not reality. Your unconscious preventing you from finding externally what can only be found internally. Jung worked with a woman who had been married 5 times. 5 different men, 5 different backgrounds, personalities, professions. And yet, somehow, all 5 marriages ended in the same way. The same dynamics, the same betrayal, the same abandonment. She came to Jung convinced she was cosmically unlucky in love. The universe had cursed her. Some external force was sabotaging her happiness. Jung showed her the truth. There were never 5 different men. There was one pattern, wearing 5 different masks. Her unconscious was directing the same film over and over, casting different actors in the same role, creating the same ending, because something in her needed to repeat this drama until it became conscious. When she finally saw the pattern, when she stopped blaming the 5 husbands and started examining the one constant herself, the pattern broke. Not because she forced it to, but because consciousness itself dissolved the unconscious program. This is what Jung meant by fate versus free will. You don't have free will if you're unconscious. You're a puppet of patterns you can't see. The unconscious directs, and you call it destiny because you can't see the director. But the moment you become conscious of the pattern, you're no longer subject to it. Consciousness itself is the liberating force, not effort, not willpower, not positive thinking, awareness. Here's what this means practically. Every problem you've ever had is the same problem, different disguises. Same root: depression, anxiety, addiction, relationship failure, career stagnation, existential emptiness. These aren't separate issues requiring separate solutions. They're all symptoms of one condition: unconscious material demanding integration. The unconscious is not your enemy. It's not a repository of darkness trying to destroy you. It's a messenger, constantly sending signals, trying to communicate what you need to see. But if you don't listen, it has to get louder. The whispers become shouts. The hints become crises. The nudges become breakdowns. What we call mental illness is often the psyche screaming because its whispers were ignored. What we call breakdown is often the unconscious demanding to be heard after years of being silenced. Jung himself went through this. Between 1913 and 1917, he experienced what he called his confrontation with the unconscious. It nearly destroyed him. Visions, voices, overwhelming emotions, the dissolution of everything he thought he knew. By any external measure, he was having a psychotic break. But Jung did something revolutionary. Instead of fighting it, instead of suppressing it, he turned toward it. He listened. He engaged. He let the unconscious speak. What emerged was not madness but wisdom. The chaos transformed into insight. The darkness revealed itself as guidance. The breakdown became breakthrough. Jung documented this in what became known as the Red Book, his most personal and profound work. And the core lesson was this: the unconscious is not the enemy. Your resistance to the unconscious is the enemy. When you stop fighting and start observing, when you stop suppressing and start listening, something alchemical happens. The problem that seemed solid begins to dissolve, not because you solved it, but because you saw through it. This is what Jung called the dissolution of complexes. A complex only has power when it's unconscious. The moment you see it clearly, the moment you can say, "There's my abandonment," complex activating, instead of "everyone abandons me," the complex loses its grip. It doesn't disappear immediately, but it's no longer possessing you. You're witnessing it, and witness is freedom. The same principle applies to projection. A projection only works when you don't know it's a projection. The moment you recognize that you're projecting your shadow onto someone, the projection weakens. You can still see the projection, but you're no longer fooled by it. You know you're looking at yourself. This is the alchemy of awareness. Consciousness itself is the philosopher's stone that transforms lead into gold. Not effort, not struggle, not years of therapy necessarily. Simple, direct, unflinching awareness. But here's what no one tells you. To access this awareness, you have to shift your identity. You have to stop being the one who suffers and become the one who observes. This is the deepest teaching Jung ever offered, and it's the one most people miss. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not your problems. You are not even your personality. You are the awareness in which all of these arise. Jung made a crucial distinction between the ego and the self. The ego is who you think you are. It's the character in the movie, the one experiencing all the drama, the one suffering and striving and seeking. The self is something larger. It's the consciousness that contains the ego, the screen on which the movie plays, the silent witness watching everything unfold. When you identify with the ego, every problem feels personal. Every attack feels directed at you. Every failure feels like your failure. The ego is fragile because it's not ultimately real. It's a construction, a useful fiction that allows you to navigate the world. When you shift identification to the self, something profound happens. Problems don't disappear, but your relationship to them transforms. You're no longer the one drowning. You're the ocean in which drowning happens. You're not the one suffering. You're the space in which suffering arises. This isn't dissociation. This isn't spiritual bypassing. This is the natural state that every wisdom tradition has pointed toward. The witness, the observer, the awareness that cannot be disturbed because it has no form to be disturbed. Jung saw this in his patients who achieved what he called individuation. They didn't become superhuman. They didn't transcend their problems. They became able to hold their problems without being consumed by them. They could say, "I notice anxiety arising," instead of, "I am anxious." This subtle linguistic shift reflects a massive psychological transformation. You are not depressed. Depression is happening within the field of your awareness. You are not afraid. Fear is moving through the space that you are. You are not your trauma. Trauma is stored in a body and mind that you witness. When this lands, the compulsive search begins to end. This brings us to the final truth, the one that could make this the last video you need to watch. Every external search is misdirected. The guru you seek is inside. The wisdom you chase is your own. The answer you've been hunting your entire life has been waiting patiently within, obscured only by your certainty that it must be somewhere else. Jung understood this deeply. He called it the phenomenon of transference, but it applies far beyond the therapeutic relationship. When you find a teacher who seems to speak directly to your soul, when a book feels like it was written specifically for you, when a video seems to contain exactly what you needed to hear, something real is happening, but it's not what you think. You're not receiving wisdom from outside. You're projecting your own inner wisdom onto an external figure so that you can hear it. The teacher is a mirror. The book is a screen. The video is a surface onto which you cast your own knowing. This is why the best teachers always say the same thing in different words. You already know. The truth is already within you. My job is just to remind you of what you've forgotten. Jung watched this pattern throughout his career. Patients would come to him seeking answers. They would project their inner wise figure onto him. They would listen to their own wisdom while believing it came from him. And the therapy was successful to the exact degree that they eventually recognized, this was mine all along. This doesn't diminish teachers or teachings. It reveals their true function. They're not suppliers of truth. They're triggers for recognition. They help you remember what you already know. So here's the practice that could end your search. Stop asking what's wrong with your life. Start asking what your life is trying to show you. That situation that keeps repeating? Ask what your unconscious is trying to make conscious through the repetition. That person who triggers you? Ask what part of yourself you've projected onto them. That emotion that keeps arising? Ask what message it's carrying from depths you've ignored. That pattern you can't break? Ask what complex is directing the drama until you finally see it. Everything is communication. Everything is your psyche trying to wake you up. The problems are not obstacles to your growth. They are your growth disguised as obstacles. This is what Jung meant when he said there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Not because suffering is necessary, but because your unconscious uses discomfort to get your attention. If you were comfortable in your sleep, why would you ever wake up? So here's the final paradox, the one that closes the loop. You are the seeker, and you are the sought. You are the one searching for truth, and you are the truth that's been waiting to be found. The journey of individuation, Jung's term for psychological wholeness, is not about becoming something new. It's about becoming what you already are, removing the masks, not adding new ones, dissolving the false selves, not constructing better ones, recognizing, not achieving. If this lands, and I mean really lands, something permanent shifts. Not because I've given you anything, but because you've recognized something that was always yours. The search doesn't have to continue forever, not because you've found the answer outside, but because you've realized the answer was never outside to begin with. The projector has always been within you. The screen has always been within you. The audience, the director, the entire theater within you. And the one who realizes this? Also you, the deepest you. The one who was never lost, never seeking, never suffering. The witness that remains when all the dramas end. This is what Jung spent his life pointing toward. This is what every authentic teaching ultimately reveals. This is what your unconscious has been trying to tell you through every crisis, every pattern, every projection, every pain. You are not broken. You never were. You're just dreaming that you're broken. And the dream has felt very real. Wake up. Not to some cosmic truth out there. Wake up to yourself. The self that dreams the dream. The self that projects the movie. The self that has been waiting patiently, eternally, for you to turn around and recognize. This might be the last video you need to watch. Not because it contains the ultimate answer, but because it points you toward the only place the answer has ever been. Within. If this recognition is beginning, if something in you knows that what I'm saying is true, subscribe to this channel where we explore Jung's insights for those ready to stop seeking and start seeing. Watch the video appearing on your screen now about the shadow and how to recognize your own projections in daily life. Remember, you're not here to find the answer. You're here to recognize that you are the answer. And that recognition changes everything.